Thank you everyone for being here.
Thanks, Bobby. And welcome, Ryan HONSCHOOTEN. I hope I pronounced your name properly. So here's Ryan, and here's Ryan doing his sea survival course. I hadn't met Ryan before this evening, but absolute pleasure to meet Ryan. And I read his sailing CV, which very extensive, and sort of precedes him with all of reading about some of what he's done. I'm sure he's done a lot more. And the title of his talk tonight is Life is Too Short. And he's certainly crammed a lot into his life so far, and I'm sure he's got a lot more planned yet. So I'll just quickly run through some of his sailing achievements and adventures, which are starting with 2014 World Champion Match Racing in Italy, 2016 Sydney to Hobart, 2016 Sydney to Gold Coast Racing, and he got some cruising back to Sydney.
It was slow.
2018 sailed 3/4 of the way around the world in a square rigger called Tenacious, including a rounding of Cape Horn. He's a regular crew member on the well-known boat SNS 34 Huckleberry, in which he's done races, Bunbury return, Cape Naturalist return, Turin Bay and return, and almost every other ocean race on the west coast, except Albany, we note, and maybe he's too sensible to do Albany race.
Another year.
And we also have it on good authority that he's the best time night skipper around. So welcome, and we look forward to hearing more about all of this. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you very much, Steve. And we had a few technological issues earlier tonight. My laptop decided not to work and all these sort of things. So I've got my Adriana executives here, Steve, and he is going to press my buttons for me when I need it. Okay, so I'm sure he's going to do a great job. So yeah, be nice to him, all right? Yeah. So all right, a little bit about myself. I'll give you a bit of history, a bit of background, and all that sort of stuff. How long have we got?
5 hours.
5 hours? Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's right. As long as someone replaces the glass up here occasionally, all right. I've got to donate blood tomorrow morning, so you've got to fill me up. All right, so yeah, I'm 40-something years of age, and I lost my sight when I was, my right eye I lost when I was 10 weeks old, and my left when I was 2.5 years old. Had a condition called retinoblastoma, so the cancer of the eyes. Pretty much had to take the eyes out or lose the child. Now, some people might argue that losing the child would have been better in the long run, but my parents made the sensible decision and took their eyes out instead. It hasn't stopped me. I've kept on moving throughout life, and I think the main reason for that is because of my parents. And I now work with vision-impaired children and youth, and I work with their parents. And part of what I say to them is all the time is to the parents, there's nothing wrong with your child. Your child's normal, it's just their eyes don't work, or they don't work so well. Bring them up as a normal kid like my parents did. You know, I remember for my 9th Christmas, they bought me a BMX bike, and I was out in the park across the road, and the boys there, they'd build jumps, and they'd all line up along the side of the jump, and they'd clap and go, this way, this way, this way, this way, and then someone would be running backwards behind the jump. And over the jump, I would go as well and stack and do the rest of it, and we didn't even wear helmets back then. We were tough, and no shoes. So yeah, they did that. They bought me skateboards, they bought me roller skates. They just treated me like a normal kid. I climbed trees. I don't think all my front teeth, none of them are mine. They're all borrowed from somewhere else because I knocked them all out pretty early. And you know, so the only thing I haven't done yet is broken a bone. I've had plenty of stitches. I think I'm around about 30 different spots, but I haven't managed to break anything yet. But then I guess old age might solve that problem for me. So yeah, and was brought up as a normal kid. I'm the oldest of 5 in the family. I now live with my younger sister, and believe it or not, we actually get on really well together. We decided to buy a house together, and the only thing that frustrates us about the both of us is the ideas we keep coming up with, the expensive ideas we keep coming up with to renovate the house. I wish just one of us would stop. And that's another reason that stops me going sailing, because, we can't go sailing this weekend, why? Oh, we got to pull the bathroom apart, something like that. So, anyway, through my childhood, I went to a normal kindy, and then after that I had to go to a special school to learn Braille for the first 3 years of my life. I don't know why, because I very rarely use Braille these days. And then I went to a primary school, normal primary school, then went to a normal high school, good old Gosling's High School, where to this day I'll still say that I learned more about sex, drugs, than I'll ever need to know. So it's, wow, education. Then went off and did a year's study in radio and television presentation. Obviously got the face for radio, so I didn't go very far with that, so I ended up working voluntary in community radio for about 10, maybe 12 years. I worked at Information Radio, which is a radio reading service. I worked at Curtin FM. I worked at Sunshine FM. Never made it to RTR, never big enough for that. And then, Fremantle. I made it to Fremantle FM. I did quite a lot with them too. And then one day, Mum stopped me as I was flying out the door to go on another hot date with my then girlfriend and said, there's something about this radio station in Armidale that's coming, and that's 107.3 HFM. I joined the committee there and was there for about, from 1997 through to about 2006. Went away, decided to give radio away, and then the bastards got me back in 2012, where I stayed on the board till 2017, and then I had this epiphany last year. I was down doing the geograph race, and there was one day out on the boat, and I was just enjoying myself on Huckleberry, having a good time, and I thought, what the hell am I doing back at the radio for? I really don't like it. It's taken too much of my time, and quit it, and then came back as an announcer. So I do shows on a Saturday night. You guys, it's hard, heavy rock music, Although last weekend I did put a whole session of Iron Maiden together. That was really good. Yeah, a lot of research went into that. Anyway, so that's what I did. As a child, I joined Cubs and Scouts, ended up being the patrol leader of a scout group. As a 14-year-old, I took 10 14-year-old kids away on a camping trip out in the bush in Mangendale. I think about that now and think, which parent today would send a totally blind guy, 14-year-old, out with their 14-year-old son. Now, obviously, these parents either didn't want their children back, or they trusted me. I don't know. So I did that, and also when I was around about 9, I joined the PCYC gym in Maddington there. Tom Greenwood was my boxing coach, and I stayed with him till I was about 18, disappeared for a little while, came back and started teaching juniors. I'm just racing through a bit about me, that sort of stuff, just so I can bore you with the sailing bits later. And then finally got a job when I was about 28. That was working at the Association for Blind and Reception. After a year, I'd had enough and cornered the CEO and said, give me something else or I'm out of here. And they put me then into working with children, and I did that on the weekends. Wasn't sailing back then. And also teaching seniors how to use computers on the First Step in Clicks program. And most of these were seniors that only just recently lost their sight. So it wasn't always about teaching computers. It was a little bit about adapting to the new life, talking about it, talking it through. The only problem that it was for me is that I ended up with more grandparents than I needed, and this thing here started to grow thanks to all the shortbread biscuits and cake and stuff. So, I had to give that away. Now I work full-time as the youth support officer, and I love it. I love working with the kids, and I'm really fortunate this year. Look, I started my year by sailing around Cape Horn on a square rigger. This year, I'm going to end this year for 7 days, thanks to the Telethon Institute, by taking 10 totally blind kids out in the Leuven. And this is not on a disabled voyage, it's not on a special challenge voyage. We're mixing these kids in deliberately, just with some general everyday mainstream youth. And we want to push these guys and push these kids and, make them, show everyone else, show the world what they can achieve. So that's sort of kind of me and my history. When it comes back to sailing, first introduction to sailing was back in year 11 and 12 in high school. I don't know how, but Goswell's High School got involved in sailing. Considering we only got the little tiny stream, the Southern River running down by the school, don't know. But we used to always go down to the boat shed and take the little tiny, I don't know what you'd call them, dinghies, I guess, the 3-person dinghy, take them out sailing, and eventually someone had the bright idea that we'd sail these boats from Point Perrin round to Woodman Point. That was the first time I've ever been in a boat where there were seas taller than the mast as we were going under the causeway there. I think it was probably a good thing I couldn't see what was going on, because I know by the time we got to the other end, all the other kids were that rattled and shaken up, and anyway, it was interesting. And then the following year, we decided to sail from Point Perrin down to Mandurah, and that was good. Really enjoyed it. Then it was, now this is my connection with this club. It was, so January, I just left school, I was just going into TAFE, and I had started working at Information Radio, and my mate there, Peter Luckett, he owned Chardonnay, and he rang me up one day and he said, hey, there's this world-blind sailing championships thing here in Fremantle. I know you like sailing, or you tasted it at school. Do you want to come do it? I haven't got a main sheet hand. I said, oh, sounds all right. Nothing else to do. TAFE hadn't started yet. So I came down for 3 lessons on Chardonnay and really had no idea what I was doing. Apart from about the only thing I learned was this club has really great cheap gin. And that's where my love of gin grew from. Anyway, we were buying jugs of gin. There was no this jugs of beer back then. It was jugs of gin and tonic. Anyway, so I did my 3 lessons, and the next thing you know, I'm thrown onto a foundy, and off we go, and we competed in this world-blind match, not match racing, this was just fleet racing, and this is the same one that everyone still reminds me of this to this day. No one in Perth seems to have forgotten that one of the Kiwi boats, can I just mention, it was a Kiwi boat, right, not Australian boat, one of the Kiwi boats hit fish rocks, and then one of the other Kiwi boats ploughed into the side of another boat and put a hole in the foundy, right? It wasn't us, wasn't the Australians, had nothing to do with it. Anyway, somehow we got 3rd, and we got 3rd place. I still don't know how, because I was fortunate enough to fall in love with a Swedish-blind sailor, and what I didn't realise is on the last night and on the presentation night, downstairs there, your outside area? No one told me that there's a big glass window that looks into the bar. I found out a bit too late when I was just celebrating my win with the Swedish sailor. It's alright, she didn't see either, so it didn't matter. So it was only afterwards that night someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, you really are a star. Anyway, so I hung around this club for a little while, pretty much until I fell in love with another girl, and I did quite a few trips. I did there was a Bunbury return, a Mandurah return, and quite a few just sailing Saturdays and that. And that was back on Fremantle Doctor back then, Freo Doctor. And I remember one of the trips really, really well, because we were in Mandurah there, and we were anchored off the beach, and went to, I don't even know which club we went to, because I was pretty under the weather by the time we got to the club. Anyway, had a really good night, had a good session, walking back to the beach, and everyone thought it'd be nice to get a lift on this car up this bonnet, this is a good idea, and I decided I didn't want to do this after a while, so I don't know, stupidly jumped off and flew along the road and had to end up going to the hospital and ended up with stitches in my forehead and in my chin, and unfortunately for me I was really pissed off because I scraped half the leather off my brand new Doc Martens, and anyway, I survived and came back on the boat, and only to have to ring Mum and say, come pick me up the next day, all covered in blood and all that sort of stuff. And she pretty much, all the boys in the bar thought they were going to get in trouble, but they didn't. She just said, well, it serves him right, doesn't it? He'll learn not to jump on the bonnet again. But I'm still here to tell the story. They did a couple of quite a lot of the of your twilight sails here too, so it was jumping around in all sorts of boats. So anyway, fell in love, moved away from sailing, forgot all about it, and then it was only 2006 when I became a little bit more single again. And by the way, the single life's really good. Okay, just giving that tip. So that Kylie, my skipper, now some of you might have seen Kylie around, she's totally blind as well. She's only got one leg. She rang me up and said, look, we're doing this blind match racing thing over in Italy. Do you want a free trip to Italy? And I said, that sounds all right. What do you have to do? She said, we've got to sail a boat. I said, all right, I'll do it. When are you leaving? Me thinking, we had at least 6 months training or something like that to go. She goes, in September, and this was August when she rang. So anyway, very frantically got myself onto the, any boat we could back then. It wasn't the sonars, we weren't allowed to train in them yet. And what we used to do is we used to sail out to Matilda Buoy, and someone would put a fitting on top of it, and we would have this smoke alarm which had been tampered with, so it would just continually make a noise. And while we were trying to hold position on it, our coach, whoever we could get, would try and screw this smoke alarm to the top of the buoy, and off we'd sail. There's quite a few smoke alarms sitting underneath that buoy to this day still, probably polluting the river with the radiation and all sorts of stuff, but you know, we don't know about that. We did that. We went to Italy, went to Sicily, crammed 2 days of rules in for my benefit, went out, didn't get to sail many races because the weather over there was pretty poor. We ended up getting 10th, but I had a good time. Learned that Campari or whatever it is not really good to drink. It's not nice, but anyway. So yeah, came back and Kylie said, you know, we've got to look at this more seriously, so we did. And we then went away the next year to, I think it's called Lake Iseo, and we came 4th, which is not bad, 10th to 4th. Same thing, we only had the one smoke alarm to sail with. So, blind match racing. The way it works is all the buoys in the water make a sound signal. So you've got your windward, I'm going to do this, I'll do it for your benefit. Windward mark here makes a noise like the siren you hear on Star Trek when it's emergency battle stations, right? You got your port buoy down there, which makes a noise. It just is more like a and then we've got the starboard mark, which makes more of a that noise, right? So you've got those noises, 3 noises. Plus you got the wind, plus you got the water. Then on your boat and on the opposition boat, you've got tack indicators. So if you're on starboard, it sounds like a cricket, and if you're on port, it just does more like a din 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 din. And believe me, it's pretty loud on your own boat, so you're not deafened by the one in your own boat, not deafened by the marks, not deafened by the skipper yelling at you, or the jib hand yelling at you, or the radio going off in your ear. You've got to try and listen in for the other boat and where that is. So we practiced and we practiced. I did skip over 2009, that's right, where we did fleet racing. It was just Kylie and I went across to Rotorua in New Zealand. We did fleet racing. We came 2nd in that one, only narrowly. The only way I managed to get us into 2nd spot is because it was tied between us and the Polish team. The only way I got us into 2nd spot is that the night before, I took the Polish team out drinking, and I told them in Australia we're that tough, we do shots of port. So we were doing shots of port all night, except I paid the barman off, gave him $20 or something, and said, look, for every 2 that they do, I'm only doing 1 or something like that. So they were very under the weather the next day. It's fair competition, right? You know, this is what we do. The coach did come up to me afterwards at the ceremony, shook my hand, he says, you bloody Aussie bastard, I know what you did. So, but no, it was nice of him, he thanked me. So anyway, yes, they went across 2010, and then 2012, yes, once again, we held the championships here in Perth, but they changed the rules on us again. So this time, you didn't have to have 3 totally blind people on the boat. Now, I'll try and describe this as best I can. Someone like me, I'm classified as a B1 because I've got no sight. Someone who's got a little bit more sight than me is a B2, and someone who's got a fair bit of sight, but they still can't drive, they still can't they can still write, I guess, to a certain extent, but not greatly, and, you know, their text has to be, you know, sort of maybe 36-point font. They're classified as a B3. So they decided to change the rules on us again, and they said each boat had to be made up of 2 B1s and a B3. Well, we didn't have a B3, we only had the 3 B1s, so of course we then sailed around the course with all the jib hands, having enough sight to pick marks, pick the other boats and all that sort of stuff, as well as hear them, whereas of course we were just 3 totally blind people in the boat. So about the only good thing we got out of that is we had good boat speed, but of course we weren't getting the marks as accurate as everyone else. So we lost that one, embarrassingly, in our own city, but never mind. It was still a good time, we had a ball. And then after that we licked our wounds and we went into some serious training. And the good thing was back then is that Royal Perth put their hand in their pocket. They ran that championships for us in 2012, and then they bought a set of the marks that we were using. So we were able to practice with those marks every weekend. Also, one of their club members, Hunter, actually helped redesign and re-engineer those marks to make them a little bit louder and a little bit better. So we would practice every Sunday. I think for the 2 years straight, I never missed a Sunday practicing. We did all sorts of racing. Justin Keller was our coach back then. We would do that all day Sunday, and then Tuesday night we'd meet up for rules night or tactical night, and we ended up meeting at the Carlisle Hotel. That's where we'd meet every night. So much so that the staff ended up knowing just what we were going to order for dinner and all that sort of stuff. We didn't have to think about it; it was just happened. And Justin put us through so many different scenarios. And I remember one part of his training, he said, "We're going to train on a Saturday afternoon." Oh yeah, that's all right. What are we going to do? I was a bit annoyed because I had to miss my Saturday afternoon racing. And what he did is, while there was no one there in the club, he got 3 wine barrels and he put them out in the grass. And he then proceeded to make us race, the 3 of us, Kylie, Erin and myself, around these marks as 3 individual boats. And we had to pull on rules and all that sort of stuff and try and, disqualify each other. We were basically match racing but walking. And then eventually what he did is he would put us in the middle of the lawn and keep us spinning around on the spot until he'd had enough enjoyment. And then he'd tell us, go find the top mark, go find the bottom mark, go find this mark, go do that, go to this position on the course, go to that position. And I guess what he was trying to do is get us to picture the course in our heads and try and keep our bearings no matter how many times we turn and that sort of thing. So that was pretty intensive training. We ended up with a bit of an audience actually upstairs looking down, so anyway, my acting career I guess. So we did that. And like I say, a lot of training, an awful lot of training, and we ended up in Sheboygan I must have put the wrong notes down for Steve, I'm sorry Steve. We ended up in Sheboygan in America on Lake Michigan in 2014. It was a little bit rough because there was decent swell running through there and Kylie gets awfully seasick. So, but anyway, I don't know how we managed to do it. Oh, that's right, and this time round they changed the rules again. Every other race, we normally have a sighted observer in the boat with us. This time, apparently no observer. You're doing it on your own, they said. So we had to have a radio tied to me, the main sheet hand, and while I was doing tactics, and Erin was pointing out marks, and Kylie was steering the boat and choosing to listen or not listen to both of us, or swearing at us for doing the wrong things or whatever we were doing, we also had to listen to the boat, and that's where the umpires were. They were following us in little ribs, and they would call out radio signals and things like that. I have the audio somewhere, but I couldn't find it this morning, but there is audio of us doing the last race. I'm pretty sure it's up on Facebook or up online somewhere, and everything malfunctioned. So what happened was the tack indicator on the Italian boat, who we had already lapped anyway, so it didn't matter, their tack indicator malfunctioned. I kept radioing in saying it's malfunctioned, we don't know where they are, we don't know where they are. We were coming downwind, they were coming upwind, so of course the wind's going to carry away any noise. Suddenly our umpire yells out, collision imminent, starboard, starboard. And unfortunately the Italian one was yelling out, collision imminent, starboard, starboard. So we were heading towards each other, and it was only at the last moment that I reached over, and because I heard where the Italian were, and I pushed the tiller out of Kylie's hand over the board, and how we managed to miss them, I don't know. It was such a close call. Anyway, we ended up sailing through the finish line and we won the gold, of the blind match racing. So that was pretty cool. That was awesome. It was a good feeling. It was fantastic. Kylie and Erin have decided, or they're going away in about 2 weeks' time. They're going to Scotland to take on the World Blind Match Racing again. We did miss a few years in between because Kylie wasn't too well, but this time, once again, they've changed the rules. So they only need 2 people on the boat this time, so I opted to stay here. Okay, so that's all right. It'll change again in 2020. You wait, something else will go wrong. I don't know why. It's the umpires and all the execs. They all seem to want to change the rules all the time. So, any questions so far? I haven't asked that bit yet. Just yell it out. Any questions? No? Am I talking too fast? No? You want a break yet? You want more?
What's it like to be blind drunk?
You would know.
No, hang on, I'll tell you. I'll tell you what you do. I use a lot of echolocation to get around. You might have heard about this. Dolphins use it, bats use it, whales use it. I do a lot of clicking, like that, or clicking with my fingers, or just even footsteps, things like that. Gives off echoes from walls and doors and things like that. I use a lot of that. When you drink too much, a lot of that goes out the window. Right, and you misjudge things. You think, I'm sure that door handle's there. Positive. It's not there, right? Yeah, we get impaired vision too, don't worry. That's not just you. And look, I don't mind any question, all right? Just ask away. So yes, they did that. I know Kylie and Erin have been off fleet racing a few more times as well, and same thing, rules always change, but hey, that's all right, it's all good. So, of course, what happened was back in 2006 when I started sailing through Kylie and Sailability at Royal Perth. Sorry, I've got to keep mentioning that name. Although I might come across to this side and never know a bit later on. I guess, just started to get interested in sailing. Working Saturdays, I always had Wednesday off, and then I just happened to bump into a guy called Rudy who had Siri, and he said, well, I'm looking for crew, I need a four-decker, you know, I mean, that sounds all right, what do you do? He says, you've never done it before, and I said, no. And he says, oh, well, I'll show you. So I started racing with him regularly every Wednesday afternoon, and that was Main, and I learned how to do the four-deck on there and all that sort of stuff, and enjoyed it. I did that for many, many, many years, every Wednesday afternoon, religiously, never stopped. And then one day Rudy said something about wanting to do the Geograph Bay race, and we had to do the Iberia race, and we'll have to suddenly learn how to do spinnakers. So that was my first introduction to doing spinnakers. And I managed to do the four-deck on that, and that was a lot of fun. I learnt then that four-deckers, you've got to have thick skin, because you get yelled at an awful lot by everybody on the boat, and by other boats. You know, I don't know why. I started to think, what did I do wrong in life? Anyway, so did that, and still kept sailing on the Wednesdays, and then my Saturday work with the guys in the Association of the Blind stopped, and due to contracts, funding, governments, and all that sort of stuff. And so I thought, well, I need to start sailing on a Saturday then, got to do something in my life. So I jumped on Col 34 Reflections, and I started sailing on there, and I enjoyed myself, and we came out here and did a couple of LB races and a few things like that. I think we won one that we still don't know how to this day we did it. And I just enjoyed myself, but then all this time I remember always waking up on Boxing Day morning and watching the Sydney to Hobart race, and just the start of it, and getting interested in thinking, like, how cool would it be to do that one day? And just kept thinking about it, and it was sort of when I saw it on the internet or something like that. I saw Sailors with Disabilities over in Sydney advertising, we're going to do this, does anyone want a crew, and all that sort of stuff. Sort of did what some people do, I procrastinated a little bit, put it off, and thought, no, they wouldn't accept someone like me. I don't have enough sea time, I don't do this, I don't do that, I'm not good enough to do that, Anyway, out of the blue one day I finally picked up the courage, gave them a call and said this is what I'd like to do, and they sort of, gave me the cold shoulder-ish a little bit, obviously to test out whether you were serious or not. And then I sort of heard nothing, but I joined up, paid my membership and did all that sort of stuff, and there was lots of promises about, we'll get you over for this race, we'll get you over for that one, and nothing really happened. And then I happened to go to Sydney, because I do go to Sydney every July to work with 40 totally blind kids on a Braille music camp. That's a voluntary thing I do. And while I was there, I thought, stuff it, I'm going to give them a call and just let them know I'm here, I've got Sunday free, I've got nothing on, what are you doing? Just so happens they were having a training day for the Sydney to Hobart crew. So I got on the boat, this, 52, what's that, Kale, I can't remember the name of the, design. No, it's a 54. And anyway, I started looking around and asking questions about it. You can look, Sailors with Disabilities, you can look them up on the web, you'll work out which one Kale is. And I just started asking lots of questions, and then when they started sailing, started training, I started talking to the main sheet guy and the traveller guy, and I was like, you really should let that out a little bit more, and that should come on a bit more. And and then the skipper, John Whitfield is his name, he's a Perth boy, he started asking the crew about directions of wind and stuff, and then I stuck my hand up and said, well, actually the wind's not there where everyone's saying it's over there. So eventually he said, look, just you shut up and sit down the back, all right? This is our training session. So I went, oh, if I have to. And then he came down and sat next to me, and he says, so you obviously know a little bit about sailing. And I said, yeah, I do a fair bit, and that sort of stuff. And he says, what are you doing next year? I said, not much. And he says, well, look, we're full up this year, we can't put you on the crew, but I reckon you've got a chance, and what we'll do is we'll talk to you about next year, and we'll talk to you about training and all that sort of stuff, but what I want you to do is I want you to come over this year for a couple of races on the weekends. I said, yeah, that sounds fine, no problems. Give me the list and we'll be right. So got home, flew home Monday morning. There was an email in the inbox and it said we're going to do the Cabbage Island race, and there was about 2 more I did. And pretty much that was, fly out in the midnight horror Friday night, go do the race over the weekend, fly back 8 o'clock Sunday night from Sydney, get into Perth about 10, 11, go back to work for the week, you know what I mean? And sort of how I did it, I don't know. And everything was going well, still gearing up for the next year and all that sort of stuff. Then Phil from Huckleberry rang me and he says, there's a whole bit of the story I've missed actually, but I'll tell you that in a minute. He rang me one day and he says, I think you're about to get some news you might like. And I'm like, what do you mean? What are you talking about, boss? He says, don't worry, you'll get some news soon. And sure enough, 2 minutes later, John rings me and he says, I don't know what you're doing for Christmas, but I sure as hell want you over here because we've had one of our crew drop out and you're on the Sydney to Hobart. This was like with 2 weeks left to go. So there was a mad race panic, for me to get my stuff ready and all that sort of stuff. So going backwards a little bit, also when I decided that I was going to do the Sydney to Hobart, a couple of years before that, or maybe a year before that, I realised that sailing on the Col wasn't going to give me the sea time I wanted and I needed. So I had to speak really nicely to Wilner and Reg and say to them, hey guys, I still love you, but I'll have to jump ship because this is what I want to do, this is my ambition. This is before I'd even contacted Sailors with Disabilities. I just wanted a bit more sea time. So I went and spoke to Phil and said, you can let a blind guy on your boat. Everyone tells me these SNS 34s are indestructible, so let's test it. So, I jumped on with him and we started doing some of the offshore racing, and obviously I did alright because I haven't been kicked off the boat yet. So I did a lot of my racing with him and I learned an awful lot on the SNS 34, especially with the offshore stuff, and got a lot of sea time with him. As part of my preparations, sorry, I'm going to jump around all over the place now, need more wine. As part of my preparations, part of it was I had to go get my sea survival course. And so I rang Phil up and I said, Phil, mate, I'm going to have to lean on you here for a bit. I've got to go do this sea survival course. And I said, like with most things that I face in my life, I want to do something, there's always a barrier in the way. And I know what they're going to say. They're going to say to me, Ryan, you're going to need a buddy with you, otherwise you can't do it, or, we don't feel like we're experienced anyway, blah, 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 blah. To his credit, when I rang Chris Kelly and said, this is what I wanted to do, and I said, by the way, I can't see, I'm blind, he says, yeah, what's the problem with that? And I said, wow, that's the first time that's ever been said. Thanks. But Phil still came along with me, and we did the course, and I did my exam, all that sort of stuff, did everything right, and then of course the next day we had to do the life raft drill, and that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed getting in and out of the life raft, I had no problems. In fact, and Bernie will attest to this, I was the only one out of everybody being rescued, or everyone jumped in the life raft, that found the bloody the hatch for the lookout. Totally by accident as well. So that was quite funny. Got to put out fires and all that sort of stuff, so that was all another part of the work and part of the drill and all that sort of stuff. So went and did the Sydney to Hobart and had a good time on Kale. 4 days, 4 days, 6 hours and 20 minutes, which was pretty good. It was frightening, it was scary. We had some pretty big swell and pretty nasty winds when we left Sydney. And then it all changed as it does with sailing, and then we were becalmed in Bass Strait. It's great. Sitting around doing nothing, couldn't go anywhere. Anyway, I believe in our division we came about 42nd overall, 42nd overall in the race or something like that, and 4th in our division or something like that. Had an absolute ball. There was guys on the boat with me, there was hearing impaired, there was one guy with quite severe multiple sclerosis, there was other people with back problems, arm problems, limb problems, some of them that couldn't use their one arm and that sort of stuff. Had a ball, made some really good life friends, especially in Customs House after the race. It's really good in there because it doesn't matter if you fall asleep standing up because the floor's that sticky you don't move. So and it is wall to wall, yes. So actually I did fall asleep for a little while in there. That was quite amazing. Yeah, it's a good fun, isn't it? Yeah, and I don't know what's on the floor, whether it's the whether it's beer, spirits or whatever, or it's some of the what's those pies you eat over there? Anyway, there was the scallop pies. Yeah. Anyway, so I spent about 3 days in Hobart before with these crew. They were mad, and I think finally on the third day, I rang a friend in Perth and I said, book me a flight out of here. I've got to get out. I can't do this anymore. The partying was just getting too hard. Anyway, so I did that, came back, raced with Phil a bit more, did the Bunbury returns, we went back down to Geograph Bay Race Week again, and lots of other stuff, lots of other offshore stuff. And then went back to the Gold Coast race in 2016 as well, and I guess that's just, it's just been after that. I haven't managed to get back over east again, but, or not for sailing anyway, just didn't get back over east for racing, but have continued to be racing here in Perth and in around here and that sort of stuff. And then last year, Kylie went off on a bit of a sojourn around the world, and she came back and told me about this really great ship, this square rigger Tenacious, and she said, and I was like, yeah, you can't race on those things. Then a friend of mine got to sail on Tenacious when it was in Australia, sailed from Melbourne to Hobart, and she started telling me all about it. You'd love this ride, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, boys, girls, go away. And then one of them sent me this email about Tenacious going around Cape Horn, and suddenly I switched overnight. And I went, wow, what a way to go around Cape Horn. I've always wanted to do that. You read so many books about it, and you thought, this is good. So anyway, thought about it, same thing, procrastinated a little bit, sent off the email, got a reply saying, yes, we've got a berth, do you want to be on, blah, 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 pay you £2,000 by tomorrow and all that sort of stuff. So pretty much had to mortgage the house and all that sort of stuff. And booked myself a passage on Tenacious to go around the Horn. And then I looked at the prices of flying home from the Falkland Islands and thought, wow, there's got to be another way home. And then I looked at the next voyage on Tenacious, and it was going from the Falklands to Cape Town, and I went, yeah, that's going to be a lot easier. And it was a lot cheaper. And then just flew home from Cape Town. So in last year it was a lot of prepping and getting ready, and I was also fortunate enough to have long service leave. So that's how I was able to take the 89 days off. And I will get your press buttons in a minute, Steve. It's alright, don't fall asleep now. So this, did a lot of prep last year, had to buy a lot of clothing and all that sort of stuff. Left and flew by myself to New Zealand and boarded this beautiful ship, Tenacious, and then spent next 89 days on board. That was my home for the next 89 days, even when we got to Falklands or when we got to South Georgia. I stayed on the ship. I opted to stay there rather than sign off and go into a luxurious hotel room like some of them did. I was like, what a waste. Stay on the ship, save your money. And I had an absolute huge experience, a massive experience. So what I might do now is, just so I can have another slight sip of wine, I'll get Steve, if you do the Ryan Tenacious movie, see if we can get this playing. This ship's not made for people with disabilities. We don't think your friend will be suitable. Blah, 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 blah. It's alright, I'll write them a nice email tomorrow morning. I only got it this morning. I thought I'll stew on that overnight, and I'll write a nice one tomorrow morning when I've settled down a little bit. Tell them about their ship and what they can do with their sails and that sort of stuff. But look, I face that a lot in life. It is one of those things. It's one of those barriers. You quite often get told you can't do this, you can't do that. One of the things I love about sailors, and it doesn't matter whether we're down in the Coburn Regatta, we're at Geograph Bay Race Week, or we're just out in the water and we're just out doing something, or when we've had to come up here after a race offshore here, the one thing I love about sailors is they seem to look past the blindness, they look past the disability, they just count me in as one of them. And that's the thing I like about it the most. And that became very obvious in 2016 when I picked up Offshore Crew Person of the Year award, which was the best kept secret. I didn't even have a clue. I had no idea I'd even been nominated, and I got to this dinner, and because Phil kept on at me for weeks and weeks and weeks, you've got to come. And my nickname on their boat is Rabbit, and I'll tell you why they call me Rabbit in a second. And I thought, all right, I'll come, I'll go. And and I was absolutely, lost for words to be nominated that night. And I think in my speech I did say, one of the best things is on their boat, especially on Huckleberry, they don't give me any compensation. And I know Ian's in the room here, I've sailed with Ian before. You know, if I'm slow at getting the spinnaker in, if I'm slow at getting the main in, if I'm slow doing something, I get just as much yelling at as what everybody else on the boat does. And so I should, because I'm just a normal person. I'm just a man. Just my eyes don't work. Why do they call me Rabbit? There was one race we were doing. You know, what's the name? Is it the George Law to Rottnest and back? And it was that one of those years where it was about 40-something degrees and there was absolutely no wind. And so we're all lying around the boat going absolutely nowhere fast. And everyone was having a chat. And anyway, just recently my sister had bought a rabbit for my little niece. And I was having a bit of a spit about the rabbit, about how who's in the house, and who's here, and who's there, and we's here, we's there, you know, blah, 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 blah. And then someone asked me, what colour's the rabbit? I don't know. And they said, what's the rabbit's name? I said, Coco. And Phil said, I hear this voice in the back of the boat, Coco? That's a funny name for a boy. I said, oh, it's not a boy. And he says, what? I said, it's a girl rabbit. And then Phil started laughing, and then everyone's like, what are you laughing about? And then he says, well, there's only one way that a blind man would be able to know that's a girl rabbit. So, that name's stuck ever since. We've had many other stories on the boat. You know, one of the other things I was thinking about today, I should talk to you about. I'm looking for a sponsor to help me find to build a big 3D printer. Because believe me, once we've got one running, I'm going to print off as many Playboys as I can and do a lot of catch-up. I haven't read one yet. So, so that's my adventures. I know Phil's talking about the barley race and taking the SNS 34 on the barley race. I wouldn't mind. I'd join him. I'd go. It'd be a lot of fun. Probably, you know, slow, but that doesn't matter. It's all right as long as you get there in the end. It's just that having to push yourself, having to motivate yourself, having to do it, having to spend 2 weeks or something like that cramped on a boat somewhere. It's about that, you know, pushing yourself and getting through it. I mean, it was like that on the Hobart race. You know, it wasn't easy. It was wet, it was cold, it was miserable, 2 pairs of clothes. You know, the food was terrible. I didn't get seasick, but out of the 16 people on board, 14 did. So, of course, on one of the days, no one wanted to eat anything, so I had to get me home food and sort myself out. But it's just one of those things, and that's what I enjoy about sailing. It's about pushing your tolerance levels. It's about also fun and comfort, but it's about just motivating yourself, just getting out there and pushing yourself against the elements and having a lot of fun.